Hey everyone, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am your host, Jay Scherr, and I am super excited today. I have got a fantastic guest right here in the studio with me. My guest today was born in Boston and grew up in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. He and his late wife, Linda, moved to Flagler County in 2005. He's a proud father to one son and a grandfather to three. He holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Williams College and a PhD in organic chemistry from Pennsylvania State University. He had a 38-plus year corporate career before retiring in 2008 and then decided that same year to start his own consulting company. He has also served as a volunteer with Scherr for about 5 or 6 years. And when he's not consulting and mentoring others, you'll likely find him hanging out at the beach, involved in fitness-related activities, and out in nature in general. Please welcome the owner of Hellman Consulting, LLC, Dr. Tom Hellman. Tom, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Jay, thank you for the invitation. I look very much forward to our conversation and question and answer time together.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to our conversation as well. So I thought a good starting point just to kick things off would be for you to share with us maybe 2 or 3 words that you would use to describe yourself. Just 2 or 3 words.
I would say grateful, fortunate,
Okay.
and lucky.
Interesting. Grateful, fortunate, and lucky. Okay. So let's stay with lucky for a moment. So give me an example from your life, just one example of where you have been lucky, why that particular word came to mind.
Actually, it's a bit of a funny story. When I graduated with my PhD from Penn State, times were a little difficult in the chemical industry, and I was trying to get a job. And fortunately, I succeeded in getting a opportunity to go down to Charleston, West Virginia, and have an appointment with Union Carbide. And when I arrived there and spoke to the manager of the group that I would participate in, he was actually more interested in hearing about my rugby career than he was about my chemistry career. And I thought, now that was lucky because I had something to talk about that he was very, very interested and passionate about, in addition to the chemistry. Please don't misunderstand.
Right.
But it was just one of those things that I really didn't have a lot of control over. I view that there's a distinction I make between lucky and fortunate.
Okay.
Lucky is kind of out of your control in a way. Fortunate, I believe, is not only has an element of luck to it, but an important part of it is your decision making, your position, and the kind of potential support you get in the environment in which you operate.
Very good. Well, that's interesting. So one thing that I grabbed out of there that I didn't know about you, and that's one of the reasons why we are having this conversation today. So you had a rugby career. So you were involved in sports, and let's talk about that just a bit. So take us back in time, and we're going to get to the sports part, but I'd love to find out what your early life was like. And what I'd love for you to share with us is a bit about your upbringing. First, what kind of a kid were you? Were you a rule follower? Were you a rule breaker? Good student, not a great student early on? Just give us a sense of what you were like.
Well, as any young boy would be, I cannot claim to be a rule follower. But I would say that my transgressions with regard to rules were relatively minimal. I was pretty much a good kid, I guess, is the way to look at it.
Okay.
In terms of being brought up, I had some real interesting and good fortune, and that is that I was adopted by my grandparents. And being brought up by grandparents who are experienced with bringing up children and who are older is a blessing. I learned a great deal about life from them, from my mom and my dad. Being my grandparents, they were obviously older. My father, passed away when I was 11. And one of the things that I took from him, even at the early age of being together, is he had a saying, which was, mean what you say and say what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 11, I probably didn't really know what that would mean to me in my life. What I learned from that is say what you mean and mean what you say. To me, reflected to authenticity. It reflected to honesty and integrity. And as I went on with my career, those particular learnings were very, very important to me.
How about your grandmother, your mother who raised you, your grandmother? So you learned from your grandfather about saying what you mean, meaning what you say. What big lesson did you take away from your grandmother?
She was a terrific person. What I learned from her was strength of character. Remember now that my grandfather died when I was 11?
Mm-hmm.
In those days, women didn't drive. We didn't have a car. We would walk once a week to the grocery store, which was 2 miles away, and carry groceries home for the week. And that's just the way she was. When I was growing up, after my father passed away, she told me that I want you to be educated. That's the important distinction and differentiating factor in the United States at that point in time. But I can't afford to send you to a top-notch school. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And so that meant to me, be a good athlete, be a good student, and participate in events. And so I was captain of the football team, held the discus record for a period of time in high school, president of the class, and pretty high up in the academic list of boys in school. And what that resulted in is early admission into Dartmouth University, which you probably all know, and Williams College, which is thought of as part of the little Ivy League school in New England.
Okay.
The differentiating factor, and you'll get a kick out of this, Jay, was not the environment of the school or how I felt about going there, which sometimes are used, like my granddaughters. What I had was Dartmouth with a half scholarship and Williams with a full scholarship. When your mom's cleaning houses for $1.25 an hour, Dartmouth fell off the table, and Williams with the full scholarship became the place I was blessed to go.
Amazing. So did you know let me back up. First, did you know that you were adopted, first and foremost? And then secondly, if you did know that you were adopted, did you know your birth parents, your biological parents?
That's an interesting question, actually, because I did not know that I was adopted till I was 28 years old.
How did you find out at 28 years old?
That's interesting, too. It is that my mother was going to give me a lake house property that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And to do so, we had to find the deed of the property. And when we went to in those days, you had bank safe deposit boxes. Went to the safe deposit box, and we were looking through the different papers. And I saw a paper that said, Thomas Michael Flanagan is Thomas Michael Hellman. And I asked her about that. And she cried and said, I brought you up like your mother. And I, of course, agreed. And strangely enough, and maybe people would disagree with this, I never had the urge to see my biological mother because I felt that might have a little bit of an impact on my mother. And so I didn't. And in fact, the lady who was my biological mother knew all about me because she was from the same town, very small town, basically. And I knew who my biological father was. He was now my brother. If you can think of the legal versus biological aspect of it.
Yes.
I'm one of the few people that can say my brother was an only child, if you think about that.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
That's really interesting. So at no point in your life did you connect with or have a conversation with your biological mom?
That's correct. And in some ways, it may sound, uh, I don't know, unfair or cruel or whatever. This lady was a good person. I know that from people who had known her and
Hmm.
told me. She had her own family. Um, I just felt that it was not time at this point. I was through my schooling. I had a job. I was a person that was created in large measure by my parents. And I just didn't feel the need to do that.
Sure.
And I understand some people do. This isn't a value judgment. It's just personal on my part.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because I think that was the main point is that it's a personal decision, not something that if you're in that situation that you must do. It's do I feel it's the right decision for me to pursue that? So, Tom, what is one of the most difficult experiences that you've been through in life? And as you share that, I want you to also share with all of us how that experience has changed you. So the most difficult experience that you've
Well, there are two that I would mention.
Okay.
They're personal, basically. And that is one that um, I, with my first wife, had a daughter who passed away at age 10.
Mm,
And that was as one might imagine, a terrible experience from an emotional, grief-stricken point of view. And she had cancer. This was in the 70s. And the treatment of cancer in those days was not quite as sophisticated or as, how should I say it? The approach then was far more impacting of the human body, and the impacts were greater. This young girl at age 6 to 10 went through this journey with cancer. She had 3 major operations. The last one, she didn't survive. The other 2 she did. I taught her how to walk twice, and it was amazing. I mean, it hurt a little bit for her, and it was emotionally just a cascade for me. What I learned from that is that this little girl showed incredible courage and the will power against odds to do what she did. She learned how to walk twice during those periods of time. And that is the message to me, is that although you think things are at their worst, that's the time to really buckle up and not give up and continue to do the things you want to do and grow with that in mind.
Tom, what was your daughter's name?
Rachel.
Rachel. And your first wife that you had Rachel with, that marriage came to an end. What was the biggest lesson that you took away from that relationship and that particular time in life?
It's going to sound trite because this is what you hear often. We were married early, my early 20s.
Okay.
And as life went on, we grew apart. I was, as you had mentioned, very engaged in my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
And through the years, it just became clear to both of us that this relationship was not going to be in the best interest of both of us as time went on. And so we had what you'd call an amicable divorce. All divorces are difficult at best, but there were no really ill feelings or behavioral issues between my former wife and myself.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. So, Tom, we're going to hit pause on our conversation because we are going to take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors. My friends, you are listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. And again, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am in the studio today with my very special guest, Tom Hellman, and we're having such a great conversation. We're going to keep that conversation going right now. So, Tom, before the break, we were talking about your upbringing a bit, being being adopted and raised by your grandparents. We talked about your first marriage, the loss of your daughter, Rachel, and I wanted to kind of move the timeline forward a bit. So you were married to your wife Linda, who has since passed away, but you were together with Linda for what, over 30 years?
30 years.
How did you and Linda meet?
Oh, that is really an interesting story.
Okay.
We met at Oktoberfest in Munich.
In Munich.
If you could imagine that.
Oktoberfest, okay.
I was responsible at that time for a global programs in environment, health, safety, and product safety and the like for Bristol-Myers Squibb.
Okay.
I had a group in Europe who handled the operations end of that business. We had a group that we call, it's funny, I said, what do you want to call yourself? We're all people from plants and we're going to be talking about different activities.
Mm-hmm.
They said, Tom, we want to call ourselves the European Working Party because we work like the Dickens and we like to party as well. And so that was the name of the group. And it turned out that the way we would do it was we would go to different manufacturing facilities and they would host the particular event. Well, in this particular year, 1994, we went to Regensburg, Germany, and Linda was in that particular department. She hosted the group to go to Oktoberfest in Munich, which of course was quite an experience. And I will say this is a very personal thing, and that is that I'm a chemist. I mean, I'm a left brain kind of guy. When I saw her, I fell in love with her.
Immediately. It was just like,
immediately. And what cemented it was we were going on the different rides at the Oktoberfest, which is an amazing event, by the way. It's kind of like Disney World put in place for 6 weeks. Then they take it down again. Wow. It's unbelievable. Anyway, she reached out with her hand, and that was it. That cemented the deal.
Amazing.
Now, she wasn't quite as cemented as I was. So I
took a little time, eh?
Realized it was going to be, and we weren't close together. I worked in New York City, and she was in Regensburg. But what we did, and this is what I would like to say, is we wrote letters to each other for 6 months. That's the next time I had to see her. I was in Europe. And that is how we got to know each other. Not emails, but handwritten letters that came once a week. And so when you do something like that, I found, you're far more thoughtful in what you write, and it becomes a more intimate way of connecting, which really brought the relationship forward without being together. Well, once we got together again, there are a whole host of stories about that. But I just want to make the point that this was a very unusual thing for me, and it was the best thing that ever happened.
That is so beautiful. And how romantic. Amazing. Writing letters like that for 6 months every single week. It really sounds like something that you would see in a romantic movie plot, right? I love that. And when I share that with my wife, she's going to ask me to start writing letters. I can tell you right now. So you and Linda together for almost 30 years. Linda passed away a year ago. Yeah. And walk me through that experience with Linda and how you were able to deal with the loss of Linda, and I can't even imagine, right? You're kind of I can almost imagine you thinking back to your own daughter passing away at 10 years old and dealing with that type of loss. So help me understand what that was like for you.
I will. I'd first like to give you just a little bit of insight into Linda, because I think
Please.
That's important with regard to answering the question.
Sure.
She had several things that were just, I found, absolutely singular in her. One is, if you can understand the words, powerful gentleness. I know that sounds like a non sequitur. She was able to walk into a room and put out the positive energy that actually calmed people down. And she was super empathetic. She could not only with me, with her clients. She was a psychotherapist, a craniosacral therapist, and quite excellent at it, I should say. We were an interesting couple, and I hope that this is true with all, that our value systems absolutely aligned, and we were both, optimistic, and we were very much with each other. We had a little way of dealing with areas. Every marriage, every partnership has times when you may have a potential conflict, or there may be a difference in thinking about how something should be handled.
Sure.
And so,
I don't have that, by the way, but I know a lot of people do. No,
well,
I'm
just
kidding.
in case it comes along someday, Jay, I'm going to give you
Yes.
some advice as to maybe you may want to
Please.
consider dealing with it. In our case, we decided that neither of us were mind readers, and you never could tell, obviously, how important a particular issue was for the other partner, unless it was really emotional in that. But normally you didn't. So what we agreed to is if there was a thing, issue, or occasion that we were disagreeing about, we would say, okay, and you have to be honest with this, how important is this to you? And the honest answers sometimes were, it was a 3 for her and a 9 for me. Well, that decision was made. Or conversely, it was a 9 for her and a 3 for me. And that would make the decision. 90% of our decision making that got to that point were handled that way. Now, the other 10% were when she was a 9 and I was a 9. And then we had to just sort of discuss it,
Right.
and work it through. But in any event, we found ways of trying to minimize conflict, and I actually give her full credit for that. If there's anything among the things that I learned from her that were important, this is one of them, is that we're not mind readers, and if there are ways that you can figure out in a neutral fashion to determine the importance to your partner, it may save you a bit of unnecessary misery.
That is a great piece of advice, and something that I'm going to certainly take away from this conversation. I really appreciate you sharing that one with us, and also sharing a bit about Linda and giving some additional context around her and your relationship. So take me back to working through the loss and the emotional side of that. And as you're sharing that briefly, Tom, I would also appreciate it if you would kind of give me a sense of where you are with that today, because you've dealt with a lot, and obviously you've done a lot of work to get to where you are right at this moment.
That's a difficult question to answer. I'll do my best.
Okay.
I recall after Linda passed, a friend of mine, a lawyer, wrote me a note, and he said that he was at a conference once when the speaker was talking about grief. And the speaker indicated that the deepest and most profound grief comes when you lose a life partner, particularly if you've had a loving relationship. And so I experienced that. It was a very difficult time. And it's, I know this is a terrible analogy, but it's like getting hit in the solar plexus with a sledgehammer. It impacts you emotionally. It impacts you cognitively. You have mind fog. You don't feel very good. You may have some minor feelings of depression, etc. And physically, interestingly enough. And so those types of things take their toll for a period of time. And I think each of us deals with it differently. So I can't really give good advice with that. The advice is if you can find someone to help you through it, all the better. I was fortunate in finding that person, and she helped me deal with them. She had experienced the same thing. So it's that kind of a journey, and it is a journey. I just advise people to, I find that if I write about things, it helps me. It sort of forms a release. And in my writings, I likened it to having a tornado tear up all the pieces of your life. And what you've got is a pile. And you stand on the cusp of a great dark valley. And that dark valley is the grief that you're trying to deal with. And the advice I give is try to find the light, to provide light in that valley. The loved one doesn't want you to be grief-stricken. And that's hard to remember, hard to bring forward. They want you to have, particularly with a loving relationship, they want you to have a full and enjoyable life. And to a certain extent, I know this may sound counterintuitive again, it's to fulfill her wish that gives you enough strength to do so.
Beautifully said. And thank you for sharing from your heart. I know that's not easy to do. So, as we are getting close to wrapping up our conversation, share with us what you are most optimistic about today. What are you most optimistic about?
Well, I love my family dearly. It's a very narrow family line in the sense that we only have one son, daughter-in-law, and 3 granddaughters. So it's not like a lot of cousins and others. As I had mentioned earlier, I was basically an only child, and so was Linda. And we didn't have children between us. So what we had was the one child. What makes me happiest and what makes me optimistic is my granddaughters. There are times we look at the younger generation and we can't see the light and we can't see the potential that resides there because they have a different language, the music is different, and it's sometimes hard to cut through that, and we can't do it. Well, I'm so fortunate with these girls because I've grown up with them, obviously, and we've had the kind of relationship that I wasn't there all the time. And so it got a special patina to it in the sense that when we were together, they would spend time with me. And even today, they're now 21, 25, and 28. I was just up north to the lake house over the 4th. Each in turn came and sat with me for an hour and a half to talk about where they are, what they're thinking. Grandpa, can you help me think some of these things through? And I just cherish that.
That's
And
so
for
good.
that, I feel enormously grateful for the life I've had.
You've got so much to share, Tom. Tom Hellman, I want to thank you so very much for joining me today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I tell you, I appreciate you opening the curtain and sharing from your heart and sharing of your mind and part of your story. I really am grateful for you, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. So thank you so very much.
It was my pleasure to be here, Jay. And if we can connect with even 1 or 2 people in the audience, I would be quite pleased with our effort.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be that and so much more. All right, my friends, I want to thank you so very much for tuning into Business Minds Coffee Chat. We'll be back next Saturday morning at 8:30. And until then, keep learning and growing and keep doing the work to reach your potential. Take care, everybody.